Hi guys, welcome to lecture 1 of unit 1, and we're going to be introduced to the topic of biology. And you can see here I've got a special kind of a leopard. It's a snow leopard. They live in the Himalayas. Very rare animals, very difficult to interact with. Snow leopards, they were always my favorite. They're such a beautiful big cat. And I remember when I was in 9th grade and I found out I was going to be in a biology class, I was so excited. I was like, oh great, I'm going to get to learn about snow leopards. And never really did get to learn too much about snow leopards in my bio course. And so I'm going to try to give you guys opportunities to learn about the things that you're interested in, along with a bunch of stuff you're not so interested in, but I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. Okay? So just hang in there with me, and let's get going. So our first topic is, what is science? And I've asked you guys to watch a video on what science is, and it's hard to describe. You know, scientific thought emerged thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, probably, really. I mean, all technologies are scientific in nature. I'm sure learning how to cook food is a form of science, right? But formalized science it really emerges with the beginning of civilization about 10,000 years ago, right? So these priests were actually watching the sky. They became astronomers. Of course, they also, those first cities in what is today Baghdad, Iraq, that's where the Golden Crescent is. Of course, they built large buildings, which required architecture, which is a form of science, and also, of course, in order to supply those cities with food, you had animal husbandry and agriculture. So those are big science topics. Anyway, scientists and the scientific method is often called empiricism, and empiricism is about making observations, okay, and being skeptical in your observations. All right, so scientists are skeptics. They think that seeing is believing, and in order to understand things from a scientific perspective, we go through a type of thinking called reductionism, okay, or analysis, we'll say. So we can't understand these complex systems unless we take apart individual parts and break them down and understand the individual parts, and then we can come to an understanding of the totality, the whole. All right, so reductionism means to break things down, and we do that with analysis. Well, when we think about scientific thought, we think about levels of surety or levels of scientific certainty. And we go from a hypothesis to a theory to a law. And a lot of times, you know, you've probably been taught that a hypothesis was just an educated guess. And that's not really true. What a hypothesis is an answer to a question that you pose. And it's a prediction. It's a prediction about what you think will happen. Okay, and the only way for you to test your hypothesis is through experimentation. Now, scientists aren't always conducting experiments. A lot of the times what you'll do is you'll do research before you conduct your experiments, and you're really not going to be doing real experiments until you're a PhD or somebody working for a PhD kind of person. That being said, you know, all scientists are constantly involved in thought experiments, all right? So, what is a Gedanken? Well, hopefully you see that this word is not an English word. Gedanken is actually it's a German word, and it refers to a thought experiment. And one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century, Albert Einstein, spent his life posing Gedankens, all right, these thoughts experiments. And we'll talk about one of those in a minute. So, a hypothesis is a prediction. Well, a theory is a collection of hypotheses and data that are all leading toward the same scientific consensus, okay? But theories often can't be definitive in a sense. They can't be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, but all indications are that the theory, and theories are like kind of like constantly emerging. Theories are in the process of, and And in short, you take a bunch of hypotheses and put them together to form theories. And hopefully you're seeing in these animations here an allusion into one of the big theories about a major event that happened in Earth's history. And that was the extinction of the dinosaurs. And the current theory to explain what happened was that it was the result of a meteorite impact. Okay, so this is the meteorite impact or asteroid impact hypothesis. And so why do we believe this happened? Well, if you're a paleontologist or a geologist and you know about the stratum of rock layers, you'll be familiar with something called the KT boundary, the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary. We exist in the Cenozoic era. The Cretaceous was in the Mesozoic era, but the first period of the Cenozoic era is the Tertiary period. Anyway, there's a boundary of rock there, and if you're down deep enough, you're in the Mesozoic layer, the Cretaceous era, and there's all kinds of dinosaur bones there. Well, as you come to the surface, suddenly all the dinosaurs disappear. Now, the dinosaurs were around for like 200 million years, so it's a big deal in terms of fossils present. Okay, so the KT boundary is a layer of the Earth's, and it's around the planet. Everywhere we go, there's this KT boundary where dinosaurs were here, and then they suddenly abruptly disappear. So that's one piece of evidence. All right, and there's no dinosaurs around today unless you consider birds dinosaurs, which they, in a sense, are. There's another piece of evidence that was accumulated by some chemists and physicists, and there's Luis Alvarez and his son. I forget his name, but they went to the KT boundary. They took samples there, and they found that there was an iridium-rich layer of soil. And iridium is a very rare element on Earth, but it's very commonly found in asteroids and meteorites. All right, so these guys are chemists. They're radiochemists, but they're also, we're pulling in astronomy here. So now we've got chemistry, physics, astronomy, geology, and of course, more geological evidence is found off the coast of Mexico, where there's a huge ancient impact crater that happened about 65 million years ago, right at the time of the KT extinction. There's all kinds of special shock quartz found there at the Chicxulub crater, and so those are all these different disparate hypotheses that are tested and found to be accurate, that have predictive accuracy, that come together to form this theory called the meteorite impact hypothesis to explain dinosaurs' extinction. All right, so that's a theory. Will we ever know for sure what happened? Not unless we invent time machines, okay? But as evidence grows, we accept the common explanation. In fact, one of the themes for all scientists, and this is actually from an Arabic perspective, there's a guy named Occam, and Occam would employ Occam's razor. And this was a pattern of reasoning, which says that the simplest explanation is the most often the correct explanation, right? So all scientific data points to a consensus opinion where everybody sort of agrees, like, well, that makes the most sense. And that's where we are with the dinosaur impact theory. Now, there's another level of scientific certainty. And that is the level of a law. Okay? So we've got hypotheses, which are predictions, theories, which are accumulations of lots and lots of evidence from lots of different hypotheses. Now, finally, you have a law, and a law is a description of an observable universe that has no evidence to controvert it. There's no evidence against it. It's right every time. And a classic example of a law would be something like we see here. You see this F sub g equals big G m little m over r squared. That's Newton's law of universal gravitation. Newton was famous for being a scientist back in the day. He actually invented calculus when he was 23, which is kind of amazing. But he also was the father of modern physics, really. And he observed the falling of an apple, and it gave him an idea for this force called gravitation. And there's the equation that describes the force of gravity. And that's this attraction between two massive bodies. And the bigger the radius is between them, the smaller the force becomes. And that law and that equation's used to calculate, how we can intercept comets out in deep space. All right, so it's extremely accurate, totally right, except it was wrong. All right, so Newton's theory still stands, still used today by NASA to, set their courses for their spaceships. But there was a guy named Albert Einstein, and he wrote a bunch of equations. One of his most famous is this E equals mc squared equation. And that's the mass to energy conversion. And that's part of his theory of relativity and special relativity. And what Einstein says is there's no such thing as gravity. Mass curves space-time, which is an interesting idea. There is no gravity, all right? And guess what? Einstein's right time and time again, which makes Newton wrong in a sense, or less right. And so laws are written and laws are right, but they can be superseded. The great truth of science is that it's constantly evolving, and that there are things that we can explain with high precision, but then for the big answers in the world, like where are we going, what happens when you die, maybe we're never going to have an answer for it. Anyway, so those are the 3 levels of scientific precision, and I'll post a little quiz for you guys.